morning. This is Jay Rovert, founder and director of the RnB Group, with another one of our fascinating interviews with one of our favorite attendees. And I'm so proud to introduce Bryan Mattimore. Bryan, please say hello to us.
Hey, Jay, thanks for having me. My 11-year-old friend here. I appreciate being on your show.
Oh, thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule. And I know you were one busy guy. Bryan, we've done some homework together, comparing some notes. And as in most of these interviews, I love to go back to somebody's early days to find out with their parents and the influences that shaped them at a very early time. I know my own father, who died when I was 8 years old, he had a huge effect on my life. So I know you were telling me stories about your dad and mom, where they met in World War II. And let you introduce us and tell us a little bit about his experiences and how it was a major issue in the way he formulated his career.
Yeah, thank you. My dad was a lieutenant in the Navy. He'd gone to Dartmouth, and he served on the aircraft carrier Hornet, the second one that was not sunk. and so when he came back, he was actually injured when a kamikaze came in, and then he was part of a special propaganda unit for the Navy, and that's where he met my mom in Washington. She was in the Waves and part of a code breaking group. So growing up with him, he was an idea guy, and so he stressed to me the importance of coming up with new ideas and also learning how to sell. So that was the two major influences growing up with him.
And then he went into the advertising industry, if I'm clear, or did he go to Dartmouth? When did he go to Dartmouth? And then
he went to Dartmouth before the war. Then he worked on the Eisenhower campaign. He had worked for Connie Nast, and they got him to be director of the Citizens for Eisenhower campaign. And then he went into advertising. And I'll tell an advertising story. There's a wonderful story. He was on the Pepsi account, and the problem was people would say, "Give me a Coke," and so he came up with the idea, "Say Pepsi, please," and that was one of his lasting. I was at Cracker Barrel the other day and saw that sign. It said, "Say Pepsi, please." So
interesting.
Anyway,
interesting. And again, just growing up with him, especially him starting out with Sammy, was developed into one of the most powerful brand names in his industry. You really learned at a very young age the importance of new ideas, and basically it was the groundwork of your career in the innovation industry. Am I correct?
Absolutely. And actually, Sammy, for the younger listeners, that became the #2 research firm in the country behind Nielsen. It was ultimately merged with Sammy Burke. It studied warehouse withdrawal data movement in the CPG industry, merged with Control Data, and then was bought by IRI. Anyway, he had formed that as an entrepreneur at Time Incorporated. He had a eureka moment when he was walking by the Time Incorporated subscription computers and said we could use those computers to create this new service, which is what he did. By the way, he also named it after our English setter dog, Sam. So he's a fun guy. But again, the importance here was that ideas move the world. And so I have spent my life trying to understand how you get new ideas. And so that's really what I've done. And how do you make a living out of that, which was the real trick.
Sure. Well, let's back up a little step. And then you got into the friendly neighborhood school. I think it was Dartmouth. And from what I gather, you got pretty good grades there. And you were also a star athlete.
Well, star might have been oversaying it, but I did play squash, and I did get the alumni award, which was really for effort, more than talent. But playing squash was great. As you know, you get to go to all the schools and meet some jerks and some fun people.
And learn some more about leadership and toughness.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I guess squash is the best aerobic exercise you can do on the planet based on the amount of time and calorie burn. So it was a good thing to do.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you graduate cum laude, if I'm correct.
Yes, yes. I was a psych major, and I loved it. I couldn't believe that I was able to study, the human thinking processes. It was such a joy for me to be able to study psychology, frankly.
Well, and to become law in one of the best schools in the country and also have an outside personal life with sports and everything else, that's quite an achievement. So congratulations.
Well, thank you.
And then I gather you just knew all along you were going to most likely get into the advertising business. And why don't you tell us about your beginnings in the field?
Well, I got it. Nobody was hiring at the time. This was quite a while ago. And so I dreamed up this crazy idea, jogging for jobs. And, I put an ad in the New York Times, got a bunch of other, kids who couldn't get a job. We jogged to the top 36 agencies in New York City. And the key was Phil Doherty of the New York Times covered it. The AP Wire service covered it because, it was a timely thing. Jogging was just becoming big,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
And so I got a job in Marsteller, and that didn't last very long. And then I basically went off on, then I worked for a new product development firm, and then I went off on my own. So I only had like 3 years of real world experience before I went off on my own.
Well, and then you decided you were going to become the more modern Napoleon Hill and start interviewing successful, interesting people for Success Magazine. That's a little out of the box.
Yeah, my passion and still is to, and my mission, without seeming overly pretentious here, is to popularize the structure of creativity. And so I said, well, how do you learn these processes? Because I wanted to understand how people got breakthrough ideas. And so I began interviewing world-class experts in all kinds of fields, and was able to write up many of those stories, including, the creative strategies of Disney, Da Vinci, and Einstein, et cetera. And so that was a great introduction. That was a great way to learn about this world. Meanwhile, I'm writing ad copy and doing anything to survive as with my company, the Mattimore
Sure.
Group. Yeah.
Brian, how did you get them to sit down with you? Because you weren't a name in the field yet.
It was actually easy. First of all, I talked to a lot of inventors. I had a local cable show called Meet the Inventors that I filmed in front of a live student audience. And nobody calls up inventors to talk to them.
Right.
They were happy to talk to me. But the creative, people around the world, generally when you say I'm doing a story for Success Magazine or whatever the magazine was, they tend to talk to you because they know they'll get something out of it. And also I was asking more than, just normal questions. So I think they found it generally a good interview.
Brian, tell me how you met your business partner for life, who is really a simpatico, good spirit. That's pretty rare in life and in business. So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I got really, really lucky. We were doing, 100 ideation sessions a year based on the success of my book. And Gary Fraser was my lead client. And he had been at Unilever. We were on retainer with Unilever to do ideation and innovation work with them. And, Gary was kind of looking for a way out. And he was the first. And by the way, he was named Market of the Year by Brand Week for creating Mentadent toothpaste. He went from $0 to $250 million. And so a brilliant marketer. And so he was the first client I met who I said, we could do a business together because we have very compatible skills. Yeah. And that's been proven. I mean, we've had Growth Engine now for 20 years as an innovation agency. And we don't make a big deal out of this, but we formed the first innovation agency sort of ever. It was, you have ad agencies, you have digital marketing agencies, and we formed Growth Engine as an innovation agency to do bigger innovation consulting projects that, there's ideation, there's creative research, et cetera.
Well, Brian, we hear about people in your industry, et cetera, but the next 20 years, you guys were together and working on a lot of major accounts. So why don't you go over that, what you think would be really important for our audience to say, gee, I'd like to hire this agency. I'd like to, they do what we really need for our company. So why don't you go off and riff a little bit about the next 20 years of the important projects that would make you stand out, that somebody would definitely want to pick up the phone or whatever and call you.
Yeah, thank you. I hope we'll still be doing this work in 20 years. We'll see.
I hope so too.
Thank you. as an innovation agency, we do classic new product development projects, and I can share, how we invented the brownie chips ahoy cookie, or helped, laser edge sockets for craftsmen, et cetera, et cetera. Tremendous number of different successful new products. But frankly, we also do things like creative strategizing, new selling strategies. We helped an insurance company increase their sales by 52% using some creative approaches, the semantic intuition technique. And so the joy of what we do is we get to learn about all different industries. I mean, we've worked in every imaginable industry with a third of the Fortune 100. And so we learn about I get to live lifetimes in a week or 2 weeks or a month or 3 months, these projects we work on. And so, given my nature, what is better than that?
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say is that because we're interested in creativity, the phrase we use is we're eating our own dog food, meaning
Yes.
we are continually inventing new products and services. So one of them that's really fun is disruptive wargaming. And we have clients, this is part of their strategic planning. They role play direct competitors, but they also role play potential disruptors. And that's a fantastic service. Companies can anticipate acquisitions by competitors, et cetera. That's one service. And then I'll just mention one other is TradeLink we invented, which is joint ideation between a manufacturing client, i.e. CPAC, which has been a longtime client of ours, the second largest frozen seafood maker in the nation. And we'll do joint ideation sessions with, for instance, Walmart or Kroger. We'll fly down to Bentonville or out to Cincinnati and ideate new products and services with the buyer. And could you imagine? I mean, 3 hours with a Walmart buyer? No, it's impossible. But we've been able to do that because they want to be part of the invention process. And so those are just two of the services that we offer.
And Bryan, you obviously did a lot of projects with Caltech. And in my humble opinion, I would think there are a group of people there who know everything there is to be known about innovation and technology. So all of a sudden they're calling Stamford, Connecticut to my friend Bryan. So tell us how that happened and what was your talent skill that they needed from you?
That's so great. And Caltech has just been such a delight to work with. I'm an innovation and marketing instructor in their executive ed department. And I got introduced to them from a friend, Mary Abazia, who has a marketing firm, and she was an instructor there. And so they were looking to me because they realized they had a hole, if you will, in the innovation side. They have supply chain experts.
Yes.
Right? They have digital marketing, et cetera. So that was a hole they had. And so oh my gosh, some of the projects we've worked on, it's such a joy because, we did one for a large, famous bank, and we did a program out at Caltech, and they invited 100 of their top clients in to experience workshops and learning experiences and cryptocurrency, et cetera, et cetera. And so I helped create that program, and so we would get a space shuttle astronaut, right? Now works for SpaceX, to talk about how you manage risk, right?
Yeah.
And so what's more fun than that, right? And people who work at JPL come over and talk about creativity and innovation. So one of the great joys in my life now is to actually share these processes with corporations, and so LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, we've been training their managers for over 20 years and how to use these processes in their job.
Sure. And Bryan, in the networking world that Larry and I are sort of associated with, I guess we're talking about companies that might be 100 million or less. What types of services? Because you meet these people, they like you, and you don't know, the person may have real deep pockets and everything. What kind of services do you provide for the small or the mid market?
We did one for a smaller building owner. They own 6 buildings in New York City. And so we did a vision, mission, and values project with them, help them reinvent their vision, mission. And by the way, values is really fun to work on. We move it from a plaque on the wall to changing people's behavior, for instance.
Sure.
So certainly with sales work, we did work with probably a $10 million software company. And the challenge there, we also did the similar work for Amazon, but the challenge for the software company was probably not surprising, recruiting and retention, right? Because that's a real issue.
Yes.
The talent, as I wrote in one chapter in a new book, the talent wars are over and talent has won. And so, so we did sessions on how to attract and retain talent, because this software firm, frankly, is passing on business because they don't have the people to deliver on it. So I'm glad you asked that question. Logistics, supply chain, sales, it doesn't matter. Manufacturing, it doesn't matter. Anytime there's a challenge that a really tough challenge that people can't solve, we will often get a call to help.
Sure. And Bryan, knowing the networking groups that still, whether it's ours or others, obviously we have a lot of people with businesses, maybe 5 million in sales or wherever they are, the small, the basic company that you're going to work on, and you're going to meet within a regular networking group, not one of the elites of the elites. What types of services would you offer them, knowing you never know where that goes? That person might have a friend from school who's a senior VP at Microsoft. So I'm just curious, how do you work with the smaller business, if you do?
Yeah, we do. We did one for a manufacturing firm, a plastics manufacturing firm recently, and we did online strategy work. We got people from around the country to be part of this online strategy session. So I hope the listener gets that it doesn't matter, frankly, the size of the organization. If it's 1 million and above, we probably worked on them in their particular industry. And Jay, I just want to share one thing, because you said, how can you help my networking listeners? Some of them may be looking for a job, or they're looking for new services to invent or whatever. And so one of the things that I've done that's been really fun is every time I go to a meeting or a cocktail party, I set a goal for myself of meeting someone with whom we could create a new product or service, right? And so it's a creative thing, mashing up my stuff with their stuff. And a good example of this was a fellow named Chris Bishop, whom I brought to our networking session. He was an ex-futurist for IBM. We created a workshop and a service called Inventing Jobs That Don't Yet Exist. And for HR people, we've done a lot of work with HR actually, and talent and learning and development. And I've written a piece for a book, Winning the Wars for Talent in the 2020, on why that's an interesting thing to do, to invent those jobs of the future, as a way to attract talent, but also for the company to imagine their own future, right? And look to train for skills that could meet future demand. And just to end it, I'll tell one quick story. We'll give this workshop to colleges and universities and also organizations. And we did one actually for the University of Bridgeport, MBA students. And we had a student who said, I am interested in both engineering and fashion. And until your talk, I didn't realize I could combine the two and do, Internet of Things in fashion and clothing. And so that's unbelievably rewarding, right? To help people invent their own future about where the world is going.
Well, Bryan, I guess sort of in closing, when people listen to this interview and they hear all the things you've done, all the accomplishments, all the background, and then myself as the director of the RnB group, I've said, you've been one of the most loyal people we've ever had over 12 years. So I was wondering if you could just throw a little plug why you take time out from your super busy schedule, going out to Caltech, going out to all these projects, and you come and you not only come to our events, you support us. And just by doing this interview, you're supporting us, which I wholeheartedly appreciate.
Well, thank you, Jay. And I thought initially it was to get business, but it really wasn't. It was to meet interesting people and frankly have new ideas and learn new things. And what's, I guess, ironic, and also I'm happy to give back and share ideas about how you get published. And I'm, I have a lot of experience in getting published, and I've talked to a bunch of your members about how they get their book and find an agent. And help. And I love coming up with new ideas for people, even when it's not an assignment. You know, just, I mean, that's intellectual candy, right? So I love doing that. And to be honest, just so you know, I mean, I've gotten some really interesting assignments out of this thing. I'll just share one or two. You know, we did work for ASME, and it was how do you use robotics in the future? And we had world-class experts come in and you know, invent the future and how you use robotics. Well, I mean, I never would have had that assignment if it hadn't been for the RnB group. And the last one I'll share with Mike Sharwin, he had me come down to Florida with a very successful firm, Designs for Help.
Yes.
And do their strategic planning session. So it's not my intent to get business out of it, but it's been a nice thing. And getting these, again, fascinating assignments. That's the key.
Sure.
Fascinating people with fascinating assignments, but really it's about the fascinating people, frankly.
And Bryan, I could tell you a couple personal stories about Michael, about how he is as a human being in terms of his friendship with Jay.
Oh my gosh.
He's basically adopted me, which is really amazing. Jay Rovert and GE culture, which just blows my mind that I would be able to get along with somebody like that, a Six Sigma warrior and a jazz fan. Yeah. So Bryan, this has been fascinating. On closing, if there's anything else you'd like to at least close the interview with, knowing how interesting this interview was, or is and was, please close it out for me. And I look forward to seeing you at one of our next events.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I would just say, you know, if people are interested in my books, they do a very good job of helping people understand how to use what these processes are: semantic intuition, triggered brain walk, et cetera, worst idea technique, what these processes are and how you can use them. And, you know, the book Idea Stormers will do that for teams, and the book 21 Days to a Big Idea will help individuals create what? A big idea for a new venture. So I'm not trying to sell books here. I do think it's tremendously valuable learning and stories about what we've done and how we've done it.
Thank you, Bryan. Thank you for taking the time. This was a wonderful experience for me personally, and I hope you got as much out of it as I did. Thank you.
I did. I should, as a marketer, say that my website is growth-engine.com if people are interested. Thank you, Jay.